Hello, friends. We are going to quickly review field experience observation hours for Education 207. So if you'll notice, we actually start in Module 3. I'm sorry, Module 2. We start reviewing observation hours by giving you some time to review the handbook. And this was also the time when the clinical experience office reaches out to you, when they reach out to you and you sign up for that 2 week window. There will be a 2 week window, which we'll talk about in just a moment. And then in Module 3 is where you take that observation hours quiz and prepare to begin the field work. And so if we look right here, this is what I'm looking at. I'm going to click right here where it says guidelines. And I'm going to take you through this part. So number one is transportation. If you cannot arrange transportation to obtain these hours, you're required to notify your instructor within the first 3 weeks of class. And so what we mean here is you may not have a car, and we do understand that. In fact, I remember I didn't have a car until I was a junior in college, so I completely can relate to that. But you can do carpooling, so with people in your class, getting together and carpooling. You can use rideshare apps or a taxi service, which we do have those locally, and they're not very expensive at all. I've actually had to use them before, and they're actually very convenient. If it's close enough, you could actually walk. If it's close enough to your home or wherever you live, or if it's close enough to McNeese, you could walk. Definitely, we have schools around, and of course, depending on where you live, there might be one right across the street, so that's an option. Also, of course, asking friends and family members who have access to private transportation, since it's you only have the 5 hours that you have to gain, which for this class it's actually only 4 hours, which we'll talk about in a moment, because one of your hours comes from analyzing interview responses from your host teacher. So, I mean, you can actually knock that out in one day. And so if you had a family member who could, drop you off in the morning, and then pick you up in the afternoon from a school, you would be set to go. We do understand that some of you are commuting you're commuting to McNeese. And sometimes, especially when we're gaining these hours, you might be placed at some of the schools that are a little bit a farther distance from McNeese, or a little bit farther distance from your home. But the reason why is because for your 200 level classes, you only have to gain 5 hours. It's really not very many at all. And you literally could do it in one day. So we put you in those farther distances for these classes so that when you get into your 300 level classes and you have to get more hours, which means you would have to go multiple days, we want to be able to get you closer to McNeese and or your home, so that you can have preference there. And of course, we want to save, the school that's closest to where you live for your residency, which will be your senior year, and you'll spend the entire last year at that school. So we have to show that we have a range of placements for your certification. So that's why sometimes these early ones, they are a little bit farther sometimes of a drive for you. But remember, the hours are very low. So you could literally do it, in one trip. And if you carpooled, that really would save on gas money, if you carpooled with someone in class. So those are my little tips about transportation. When you call, we also have a public bus that goes by many of the placements that in Lake Charles. So public transportation is also an option. So when you notify us and you say that you don't have any transportation, we're going to actually walk you through every single one of those choices. So please keep that in mind. Try to problem solve, try to troubleshoot it yourself. Of course, we are happy to help you kind of work that out, but please know that having transportation to gain your field hours or having a plan for it is definitely something very important as you move through the program. And so it's something that definitely in the 200 levels, we oftentimes help students work that out. Typically by the 300 levels, students kind of have their own transportation system sort of worked out. But it's something that we will definitely need to address because field experience is a part of our program. Getting into the schools with real children, real teachers is very important for your preparation. So in modules 1 through 4, you're going to review the syllabus, field experience handbook, and guidelines to prepare. You have to take a quiz to obtain your field placement. So that's all part of, those first 4 modules. Additionally, you will be signing up. So within the first 3 weeks of class, the Office of Clinical Experience and or your instructor will provide you with a link or some sort of survey so that you can sign up for a 2-week window. Now, please note, if you are in the online program, you're actually responsible for obtaining your own field placement using the guidelines that's provided by Mr. Campbell and the Office of Clinical Experiences. They're also going to review this with you in Education 110. And so that's going to be done within, the first 3 weeks of class. By weeks 4 through 5, typically by week 4, you will receive your field placement and it will coordinate with the window that you selected. If you are in the online program, you need to have your placement secured no later than week 5. And Mr. Campbell is actually going to review the guidelines for you, but there is a letter that you go to and you're going to present it to the principal of the school, the front office staff, and it explains how many hours you need to get. It'll explain what you're trying to get observation hours for McNeese State University to complete your teacher certification, et cetera, et cetera. So if you are in our regular program, you will receive a placement. If you are in the online only program, you will obtain it yourself. And again, the Office of Clinical Experiences will reach out and explain that process for you. So now let's talk about field placement communication. Students in the regular program, your instructor will introduce you to your field placement teacher in an email, which explains the requirements, provide your 2-week date window, and actually provides the lesson design portfolio teacher interview. So one of your hours is actually going to come from analyzing the answers to this interview. So this is set up so that the host teacher can just do this one time. So even if the host teacher is hosting, maybe 6 of you, he or she doesn't have to do this 6 times. So it's going to be set up to where they will just hit reply all to the email and they will attach those interview responses along with their teaching schedule and the best times to visit. So if you are wondering where is this? Go back to your inbox, search my name, and you will see, or your instructor's name, and you will see that, this has been provided for you here. If your instructor, so I do this for my students, but your instructor may not have emailed in advance for you. Your instructor may simply give you these teacher interview questions and may say, here's your teacher, you reach out to them, you email them yourself. So either way, you want to make sure that your instructor is receiving these teacher interview questions very early, okay? If you're in the online program, as I mentioned, you will follow the directions for obtaining your field placement provided, sorry, I misspelled that, provided by the Office of Clinical Experiences. And so you will also receive an email from me, your instructor, with a teacher letter, which includes the teacher interview questions that I provided above. You must immediately locate a teacher, communicate with the teacher, and set up the exact dates and times you're going to plan to visit. During this initial email, again, make sure that you include these teacher interview questions. So a couple of things. Note, It is required for you to request the teacher interview before week 10 of the course. Regardless, make sure your teacher has this. If you do not receive follow-up communication with the teacher within 2 business days, so this is for everyone, regular program, online program. If you don't receive a response from them, call the school, leave a message for the teacher, and or actually visit the school if you're in a situation that you can visit the school. Physically go. We may not have the right email address for the teacher. And so we don't want to just keep on waiting and waiting and waiting. Go, like either physically go or call. You might have to, put forth just a little bit more initiative than what you anticipated in order to access that teacher. They are very, very busy, and sometimes we do not get the correct email address. And sometimes, depending on the system, the email addresses may not get through their protection server, the protection filters on their servers. So show some initiative if you haven't heard anything from them. So for example, in my class, if you go back to that initial email that I sent and you see that the teacher hasn't responded, you personally call the school. You personally go to the school and say, hey, I know you may not have gotten this, but here's the letter from my teacher. Here are the interview questions. I'm making contact for this. So waiting until week 6 or 7 or later to notify your instructor of field placement communication issues is not acceptable at all. So let's say that you do go to the school or you do call and you wait 2 more days or 3 more days and you're still not getting a response from the teacher. Reach out to me. That's when you want to reach out to your instructor and let me intervene. But if you just drag this on and we're into week 6, 7, 8, and you were supposed to be in the first window, like you were supposed to be getting in the field in like week 5, that's not acceptable. So make sure that you're communicating early. If an emergency happens, which prevents you from reporting on the date time that you arranged with the host teacher, please make sure to email that host teacher, preferably in advance if you can, to notify him or her that you're not going to be there and that you need to reschedule. Sometimes they've actually rearranged their lessons if they know that you're coming so that you can see something good. Like instead of just seeing a test, you're going to see something good. So please let them know that. Number 6. So how do you actually document this? You're going to report to your assigned field placement on the dates and times that you've arranged with the host teacher. These are the documentation methods. The first is the record of field experience, okay? So if you note here, this is in yellow at the top, and it tells you how you can type in this document. So I always do this. You hit File, you're going to go to Download, and when you get to download, you can download it as a Microsoft Word document, and it'll allow you to type in it and save it to your own device. I have filled out the majority of this, I've said majority, some of this with red. You're just going to have to go back in and fill in the rest of it. Notice I've put some directions here specifically to help you know, which class you need to be doing this for. So for example, if you're observing multiple sections of a host teacher's class, let's say that you are in a 5th grade class, but they switch. And so you're going to do it all in one day. And you're actually going to get to see 2 different groups of students. Just select the one that you saw the most of, or the one that you saw first, and that'll be fine to complete these demographics. And this walks you through that here. Section B aligns with the syllabus list of field experience activities that are tied to the course. So for example, you need to click here on this blue link right here, and it walks you through how to get your answers for these questions. These are very important because it's going to help you understand more about the school that you are observing in that particular community. If you scroll down, you'll notice I've already filled out the red is already filled out for you. Notice that one of your hours comes from the teacher portfolio. I'm sorry, the teacher interview, which I included in the email. And if you're an online student, you would have given to the host teacher in advance. And so one of the hours actually is going to come from you just reading over these and analyzing these answers. So that's one of your hours. The other 4 of your hours is the observation form itself, which looks like this. Okay. So notice that the top portion of this is very, very similar to what you have to do on that record of field experience. A lot of the information is. But when we get down here to these where it says 1, clear learning objective, 2, engaging instructional strategies, 3, differentiated instruction, 4, real world application, and 5, formative and summative assessment, I want you to come over here. I want to show you. These are actually correlated to these modules. So module 5 is the critical component 1, clear learning expectations, which we just saw here. Sorry, finding it for you. This is the yellow. So you really can't fill this out until you get to module 5, okay? Which that might be the very first week some of you are observing. Same thing when you get to, look, module 6, engaging instructional strategies. Well, look right here. This is module 6, engaging instructional strategies. And you'll notice that number 3 is actually going to be module 8, differentiated instruction. And so the modules go in order all the way down to module 10. With this form. And so you're not going to be able to fill this out, some of this, until you get to those modules. But don't worry, I have a solution. Okay, so let me go back to the instructions and explain. So I put, here's the record of field experience, and here's that observation form I was telling you about. You're going to complete 4 of these forms, 1 form for each hour of observation. Okay, so let me just go back and show you. There's a place where notice it says number blank of 4. And so this will be what hour of 4. So let's say that you actually do go all on the same date. Let's say it was today. You went on 9/25. 8 to 9 would be 1 form. 9 to 10 would be a second form. 10 to 11 would be a third form. 11 to 12 would be a fourth form, and so on, however your timing is. But it's 1 hour per form. Note, put only 1 hour and or 1 class section per form. You should have 1 form for each hour of observation. So in this case, it's not 5. Sorry about that. It's 4 because you have to do 4 forms. Okay. So this is what I recommend. You will use these forms to complete a portion of your final project. And that's what you're going to do in modules 12, 13, and 14. It is recommended that you take scripted notes. What this means is that you write down or you type as much as you can of what the teachers are saying and doing. So do not try to fill out the form while you're in that classroom. You just want to be writing down everything you can. You are trying to get as much of the information as you can. Make sure you use timestamps and you separate each hour of observation. So for example, I recommend like 8 o'clock, the teacher put the bell ringer was on the board and the teacher was directing students to do it as they walked in the class. 8:05, they were reviewing the bell ringer, and then start writing down what the student said. Student said, the teacher said, what is the answer to number 1? Many students raise their hand, blah, blah, blah. So you're trying to record as much as you can. You will not turn these notes in, so don't worry about my having to read them. You just need to take them in a way that you're going to understand them later. Then after you leave the classroom, you can go back and pull the evidence that you need for each interview form. So let me remind you, to complete these forms, it will be necessary for you to understand each of the 5 critical components that are covered in modules 5, 6, 8, 9, and 10. Therefore, keep your notes and your scripting from your observations so you can go back to them to pull evidence to complete the forms as you learn more about each of those critical components. This means that you will probably not be able to submit your field experience hours in Module 13 until at least Module 12. So I'm going to put week slash module, I'm sorry, 10 here. And the reason why is if we look back over, it's because Module 10, that's when you get your fifth critical component, which is the last, it's on this form. So you really probably are not going to fully understand this critical component until you get to week 10. Okay. So this means you need to go in, you need to take notes, keep track, keep the hours separated. Then you go back and you fill in those 5 forms. Okay. So now let me just take a moment to go over the form itself. All right. So on the form, you will notice that you are only, let's say that you're there you're at your place from 8 to 9 o'clock. You are aiming to get, notice up here in the directions, it's recommended, again, that you use the scripting method to take notes. This means you write down everything you can, blah, blah, blah. Go back and review them and then categorize them into the colored categories below. You are aiming to have 2 to 3 pieces of evidence for each category. And so when we say evidence here, this means that when it says clear learning objective, your first piece of evidence may be the objective is written on the front board, and the very first thing that the teacher does in the lesson is have a student read it aloud and make it an I will statement. So over here to the right, you need to provide some reflections, some insights, and some evaluations about what you just saw, what you just heard there. So was this an effective thing to do? Do you have any suggestions? What are some insights that you've learned about? So for every piece of evidence, you do need to have some sort of commentary on it. Was it a good choice? Was it effective? What suggestion can you make to improve it? Where have you seen this done before? Was this part of your own personal experience? Do you plan to use this in your classroom as a teacher? So I don't want just the identification. I want you to actually discuss it too. Okay. And that's how it's set up there on this form. All right. Now, this is where you want to be really, really careful, because sometimes you're going to be like, man, the teacher didn't do anything at all for this hour. Of maybe they didn't make any real world connections. So this is where you would say, I didn't see any evidence of real world applications. Then over here on the right, try to pose some sort of suggestion for how it could have been integrated in that 1 hour that you saw. Like, how was it? How could it have been integrated? Where could we have made some sort of real world connection or application for the students? And so that's what you're wanting to see here. That's what I'm wanting to see here. Okay. Now let's go to the documentation of it. So when you are ready in Module 13, so let's go down. So for all of these, you're just getting in the field whenever your assigned time to go is. And then we are finally ready now in Module 13. We're going to submit this, all right? And so this is where the submission field is going to be. It gives you the directions here. And the directions are also on our guidelines right here. So in Module 13, first you will submit your record of field experience and enter your 5 hours into Watermark. So that's the first thing you need to do. Our database, which tracks your required hours for teacher certification. So make sure to take a screenshot of your Watermark submission. In Module 13, you will submit your record of field experience, 1 teacher interview form, 4 observation forms, and your Watermark screenshot. So this walks you through how to log into Watermark and put those in, put everything in. And at that point, you are finished with your field experience. All right. So please reach out if you have any questions about field experience, and make sure that you are just reading over the materials and you are, watching the video as needed. And of course, don't hesitate to email your instructor. Have a wonderful time in the field. I hope you learn a lot.